Hey there, this is Natalie, and in this video I want to talk about Laplace. Recently I did a series on my channel reading out the whole Mushoku Tensei prequel novel, Old Dragon's Tale, which has Laplace as the protagonist. Now, while that story does tell us a lot about the lore of the world of Mushoku Tensei and the origins of characters like Laplace, Perugius and Orsted, it depicts a very different man to the feared demon god Laplace, the one who caused the tragedy where Ruijerd killed his family, the one who cursed the Spurred race to be forever hated, and who waged war against humanity until he was sealed by heroes including Perugius. In Mushoku Tensei, we see that characters like Orsted and Perugius are expecting Laplace to be reincarnated in the future, and Perugius is determined to kill him. Orsted also needs to kill him, or at least Ruijerd believes he does, because Laplace holds one of the treasures he needs to reach the enemy Hitogami and kill him. Laplace has a means to reincarnate, which involves putting something called a factor out into the general population. Those born with the Laplace factor usually have some features in common with Laplace. For instance, they may have green hair like he did, despite there being no genetic reason for them to have it, or they may have an unusually large mana capacity. These people are usually just normal and have nothing to do with Laplace. For instance, Sylphie has the Laplace factor, and all it really meant for her was being bullied for having green hair. But eventually, one will be compatible, and he'll inhabit that body and be reborn into the world. So, what I want to do in this video is kind of bridge the gap between the kind Laplace we see in Old Dragon's Tale and the demon god Laplace who we hear about in Mushoku Tensei. This video will naturally contain some spoilers for Mushoku Tensei, and it also contains spoilers for Old Dragon's Tale. But remember, you can check out my series of readings to get the full story from that prequel web novel. I've finished the whole novel, so it's all there in a playlist if you want to listen to it. You don't need to have read Old Dragon's Tale to follow this video, as I will be summarising the relevant parts, but this video will spoil it if you're planning to. Now, Laplace is not expected to reincarnate in Ruijerd's lifetime, but a little after that, within the same 200-year loop that Orsted is repeating. It's mentioned that Laplace will reincarnate as a man, so girls born with the Laplace factor like Sylphie aren't really treated with suspicion by those looking for Laplace's reincarnation, but males will be. Actually, this causes concern for Ruijerd and Sylphie when they have a son with green hair, and are worried that Perugius will try to kill him. But they're assured that this son, Sieghart, is not Laplace, and that it's far too soon for Laplace to be reborn into the world. Actually, Perugius's interest in the child was because he wanted to name him, which is interesting if you consider that in Old Dragon's Tale, we see that Laplace, who was working for Perugius's mother Dora, actually named Perugius. You can find out more about Sieghart in my video about what happens to Ruijerd's children if you're interested. Still, the last we see of Laplace in Old Dragon's Tale, he's preparing for a war, incited by the fact that Kishirika, the demon empress, has resurrected. Old Dragon's Tale is basically framed as Laplace at this time telling his life story and why he's fighting to his companion Rostelina. Rostelina is an elf girl with excessive magic, who he took in after she was exiled from her village, and she stays with him for centuries, looking after Laplace and his tame dragon Saliact. A lot happens in the story, but to give a very brief summary, he was born a half demon race, half dragon race child in the demon world, back when the world Mushoku Tensei is set in was part of a set of 6 interconnected worlds. He was adopted by the god of the dragon world and taken there, where he was raised to be a dragon warrior, and later became one of the 5 dragon generals, the most powerful dragon race warriors and those closest and most loyal to the dragon god. The dragon god was married to the daughter of the human god, Lunaria, and she gave birth to a son, who was essentially Laplace's brother due to him having been adopted by Lunaria and the dragon god. That son would be Orsted, though he's a baby throughout all of this. Then Lunaria was murdered, and Dragon God was led to suspect the people of 4 of the other worlds. the beast world, the sea world, the heaven world, and the demon world. Dragon God, in his rage, fought the gods of each of those worlds, with the 5 dragon generals, including Laplace, alongside him, and those worlds were ultimately destroyed. The survivors were taken in by the one claiming to be the human god, and they were moved to the human world, which is the world Mushoku Tensei is set in, and that's why there are now people of all of those races in the setting of the story, thousands of years later. But as the final world Dragon God destroys, the demon world, is ending, Laplace finds a demon race man he'd previously considered a friend, Lacros, trying to rescue a newborn baby, a child of the demon god, and his wife, Callisis. Lacros reveals that the demon world had also had the wife of their god murdered, but they'd been led to believe Laplace was the killer. Laplace realises that both worlds have been played, and lets Lacros and the baby, who is strongly implied to be Kishirika, escape to the human world, before going back to tell the dragon god what he learned. The dragon god realises that the one who orchestrated all of this is the one calling himself the human god, that the one calling himself the human god is an imposter. He is, of course, the one we know as Hitogami in Mushoku Tensei. Dragon God now wants to go to war with the human god and the human world, but the 5 dragon generals oppose this. They don't understand why Dragon God is suspicious of Hitogami, and think what Lacros told Laplace had just been a lie to save his own skin. They're also worried that Dragon God may die if he takes on this fight, because he's so badly wounded from having fought and killed 4 other gods already. Dragon God, who is used to complete unquestioning loyalty from his generals, doesn't really think to explain things better, and in the end, the dragon generals think they're doing the right thing to try to stop him fighting the human god. Their rebellion actually ends up weakening him a lot, which was all part of Hitogami's plan. Now Hitogami can attack Dragon God in a very weakened state. He manages to land a critical sneak attack on him, and leaves Dragon God dying, and the dragon world also ending. Using powerful magic the dragon race had been researching, the dying Dragon God does a number of things as his world ends. He manages to trap Hitogami in the void world, and he also sends his son Orsted to the future of the human world with the time loop reincarnation mechanism in place, in order to kill Hitogami. Laplace goes over to the human world too, and makes it his life's mission to help prepare for Orsted's arrival in the future, to find as many ways as possible to help him kill the imposter god who caused all of this. As I said, this is very oversimplified, and I really recommend that if you're interested in Mushoku Tensei lore, you read Old Dragon's Tale, or of course listen to me read it, but I'll stop plugging my Old Dragon's Tale videos now. So, Laplace is telling this story to Rostelina thousands of years later, where he's living in seclusion with her in a mountainous area, where no one else can go because it's lousy with dragons. Laplace's tame dragon Saliact, who came over with him from the dragon world, allows them to live there safely and undisturbed. He spends a lot of time writing things down, and also goes off on trips very regularly, though Rostelina doesn't know what he's doing. After one of those trips, he seems to know that a war is coming involving Kishirika, and he doesn't yet know which side he'll fight on, but he knows it's going to be important. At this point, Rostelina begs him to let her do something useful. Having heard his story and having spent hundreds of years with him, she wants to do something to help him, and to help Orsted in the future. Laplace can think of something, but he warns her the process will change her body. He also says it could affect her memory, but he says he'll be able to tend to her while it's happening to prevent that. Rostelina eagerly agrees, finally thinking she can do something to help her beloved master, and the last we see of both her and Laplace is him having put her in some kind of incubator where her body is being modified, so that the excess magic she produces can be stored and used by someone else, namely Orsted. Laplace knows, due to knowing the magic Dragon God used to send him to the future and give him his time looping ability, that Orsted will have very slow mana regeneration, So if Rostelina can essentially produce mana batteries for him, that's going to basically get around the one thing stopping Orsted from being completely OP. Now, that's the end of Old Dragon's Tale, but we know that something bad happened to him in this war. We know this because only 200 years before the start of Mushoku Tensei, Perugius finds an elf woman encased in crystal, who, when freed, has no memories, and her body does produce mana crystals, if she's fertilized by men. If she isn't, the excess magic in her body builds up and will kill her. This is of course NatalieXHunter, but it's also most likely Rostelina. Laplace, we know, planned to make sure Rostelina didn't suffer memory loss from the process, and we can kind of guess from his personality and his relationship with her in Old Dragon's Tale that he wouldn't have intended for the curse NatalieXHunter has of needing constant sex with men to be the way her body produces these magic stones, so it seems clear that he was unable to continue tending to Rostelina properly and complete the process as he wanted to, for some reason. Incidentally, as of Mushoku Tensei, nobody who knows how NatalieXHunter's curse works, and that she produces these stones, has put together that they could be used by Orsted yet, so it could be that this will be something that comes up in the sequel. I actually have a whole video about the NatalieXHunter and Rostelina thing if you want to check that out. Personally, what I think would be really interesting is if, when Laplace is reincarnated, NatalieXHunter is his mother, but there are so many ways the author could go with it that really, who knows. So, what did happen to Laplace to cause him to leave Rostelina like that, and how did it result in him being the hated character he became? Well, it probably comes as no surprise that it all comes down to Hitogami. From now on, I'll be referring to Laplace with 3 different terms. Demon Dragon King Laplace, which is the Laplace we know from Old Dragon's Tale, Demon God Laplace, and Technique God, and you'll soon see why these distinctions are important. Now, Demon Dragon King Laplace, when he was living with Rostelina, was preparing all kinds of techniques, knowledge and magic to pass down to Orsted to help him in his mission to kill Hitogami. One thing he created was a kind of magic golden armour, which uses a lot of magic circles built into its design, and is basically a fantasy equivalent of power armour. The armour itself became known as the Fighting God. Basically, whoever ends up using it becomes the Fighting God, but it also has its own intention and will kind of take over the wearer. Around 4,200 years before the start of Mushoku Tensei, Hitogami had as one of his apostles a character named Badigadi, who, if you haven't encountered him from the novels yet, was mentioned briefly in the anime as Kishirika's fiancé. He is a demon king, and as well as being huge with 6 arms, is also immortal. He regenerates quickly even if his body is blown away. If you saw my video about Eris's training arc, it's Badigadi who Rudius had a duel with at the Magic University, which Eris's rival Nina from the Sword Sanctum saw happen, and this is where we first see the effects of his immortality on display. He's a character who'll start to appear in the next season of the anime, and will remain relevant for the rest of the plot. Still, being an immortal demon king, he was around at this time, just after the ending of Old Dragon's Tale, and he was under Hitogami's influence, following his advice in much the same way Rudius has done so far in the anime. Hitogami got him to steal the golden armour and to use it, so he became Fighting God, and then he took on Demon Dragon King Laplace. The outcome of this, in line with Hitogami's plan, was that Demon Dragon King Laplace became fragmented into 2 separate entities, as his Dragon Tribe reincarnation art kicked in. His memory and sense of identity was lost, but he retained some idea of his mission in both of his new forms. As he was defeated, he was repeating that he will kill the man god, but this intent got corrupted. One of his new forms, Technique God, could only remember that he needed to pass down techniques that could overthrow God. Technique God lost all magic abilities, but kept the part of Demon Dragon King Laplace's abilities that came from the Dragon Tribe. He remembered all of the vast array of techniques his previous form had mastered or created to pass down to Orsted, and he passes them on to whoever is the current dragon god. He's also the one who created the 7 world powers ranking system that exists in World, and made himself number 1 in the rankings. This is why Technique God was mentioned when Orsted's ranking was explained to Ruijerd in the anime. Technique God doesn't make any actual appearances in the Mushoku Tensei series, and really, he's a fairly benign force in the story. But the same can't be said for the other form of Laplace, the Demon God Laplace. Demon God Laplace remembered the other part of Demon Dragon King Laplace's original intention. So, where the original wanted to kill the human god, and Technique God thinks he has to pass down techniques that can kill God, Demon God Laplace thinks he has to kill humans. Demon God Laplace has all of the magic side of Demon Dragon King Laplace's original, considerable abilities. He has none of the dragon race aspects. This is why he has such a huge mana capacity, and also why he can't use Tuki, which is a question a few people asked me during the old Dragon's Tale readings, where in that story the original Laplace uses Dragon Tuki all the time, but we know from Mushoku Tensei that the Laplace referred to in that series couldn't use Tuki at all, similar to Ruijerd. Demon God Laplace united all of the demon races to take on humanity, which is what happened with the whole demon-human war that is referenced throughout Mushoku Tensei. This is why some demon race characters do talk favourably about him during the series, despite him seeming like the initial big bad. Demon God Laplace had the same curse as Orsted, where people would naturally hate and fear him. He tried to transfer this curse into objects, in the form of some magic spears he gave to the Spurred race, who were fighting on his side at the time. These spears caused the Spurred warriors to become basically berserkers, hungry for battle and killing indiscriminately, even killing their own families. The Spurred usually use spears that start off as part of their own bodies. Basically, they're born with 3-pronged trident-like tails, which as they mature, drop off and become their weapons. This makes each Spurred spear a part of themselves and completely unique. When they switched to using Laplace's spears, this was already a kind of strange thing for them to be asked to do, but they went along with it because they were loyal to Laplace at that time. In the end, it was Ruijerd's son who, after being mortally wounded by Ruijerd, caused Ruijerd to return to his senses, and now Ruijerd uses his son's original spear. Ruijerd vowed to take revenge on Laplace, knowing that the spears were to blame for him killing his own wife and son, though he didn't know that Laplace's curse of hatred had also been passed on to the Spurred through the spears until Ruijerd found this out, as we saw in season 1 of the anime. Ruijerd is strong, but he's by no means strong enough to realistically take down the demon god Laplace. However, the Spurred magic eye, the red jewel on his forehead, did allow him to see the weakness on demon god Laplace's body and strike a critical injury to him, which contributed to the legendary heroes, including Perugius and the dragon god of the time, Urupen, defeating and sealing Laplace. So, with demon god Laplace expected to reincarnate, Perugius wants to kill him to honour the deaths of his friends, including Urupen. Ruijerd just straight up hates him for everything that happened, and by the time the reincarnation happens, there will also be Ruijerd's daughter Luicilia, who is also a Spurred warrior, and who in other loops has become friends with Orsted and fought alongside him. Orsted, on the other hand, needs Laplace because he needs the treasures of the 5 dragon generals. These are something Demon Dragon King Laplace created using the shards of the original dragon god's God Core, which is explained at the end of Old Dragon's Tale. These are what Orsted needs to reach Hitogami in the Void World, and while he has most of them, or at least knows how to get them in this loop, he can't get Laplace's until he reincarnates. Now, I think the thing with the treasures is quite interesting, and I'm going to be going into some speculation here, but Ruijerd at least assumes that the treasures are something like the life force of the Dragon Kings, that to obtain them, Orsted is going to have to kill all of the Dragon Kings, which at this point would mean he'd have to kill Laplace and then actually Perugius too. But to me, it would make more sense if Ruijerd is actually wrong about this. It does seem to be implied by the ending of Old Dragon's Tale that the treasures are physical objects. Plus, it wouldn't really have made sense for it to be necessary for Orsted to kill the Dragon Kings as part of his mission from his father. This would not only be a bit less harsh where Perugius is concerned in the sequel, as Orsted would never have to kill him, but would also open up the possibility for different things to be done with the character of Laplace. If in the sequel he'll just be, as we expect, a very dangerous and powerful enemy that Orsted has to defeat just to reach Hitogami, then that's one thing. But it could certainly be more interesting to have other ways Orsted could obtain Laplace's portion of the treasures, potentially even opening up possibilities where Laplace could regain his memories, or be made whole again somehow, which would not only be great to see, now that we know how generally sad his story has been so far, but would also be another strike against Hitogami in general, given it was his plan to divide Demon Dragon King Laplace in the first place. Still, we can only speculate about how things will go in the sequel. All we can really say is almost certain is that Laplace's reincarnation will be a major feature of it. And that's really all I can say about Laplace for now. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts or theories about him in the comments. As always, thank you to my supporters on Patreon, who you can see on screen right now, and thank you too to everyone who supports my channel by subscribing and watching my videos. It really helps me out if you do subscribe, so I appreciate it a lot. Thank you for watching this one, and I hope to see you again very soon.